started. Okay, this is Chapter 2, Science and Measurement. So, not everything can be investigated scientifically, and this is a little mnemonic that I have seen used or that I've adopted to think about differentiating science from other ways of thinking about the world, and that's CONPIT. So that's consistent, observable, natural. We're going to go through each of them. We're going to focus on a couple. So, consistent. If it's science has to be consistent with the way other things work. One of the great strengths of science is that scientific laws, things like gravity, apply every place in the universe all the time, no exceptions. So we can't say, well, this thing works with these chemicals every place except in my lab. There, the rules are different. It doesn't work that way. When we have a scientific explanation, it's got to be relatively consistent with what we already know. Now, there are groundbreaking things that happen in science, but they still fit within the larger laws that we understand about the world. It's got to be observable. So this observable and natural are two that I want to focus on. We have to be able to take in evidence about a phenomena with our senses. See it, smell it, taste it, touch it, listen to it, or observe evidence that it happened. So let's think about, for instance, ancient life on Earth. Extinct species. How many of you are familiar with Archaeopteryx? Darn it, the feathered dinosaur. Archaeopteryx. So, we can't see this dinosaur species. We can't touch this dinosaur species. We can't listen to it. We can see fossil evidence of it, though. So we can see evidence of its existence. We can see evidence that tells us things about it. Can you see an atom with your bare eye? No. But you can observe things that give you evidence about their behavior, their structure, their function. And in chemistry, there's a lot that we have to infer from indirect observation. So when we're talking about atoms, we can't see them. We're going to talk about electrons. You can't see an electron, but you can see evidence of their behavior. And science has to be natural. We cannot invoke supernatural explanations. Why do these two chemicals bond? Because elves come along and hold them together. No, it doesn't work. No supernatural explanations. No supernatural beings. It's all got to be based on the laws of science and nature as we know them. Okay, predictability is a big thing in science. We use science to make predictions. So we can look at the behavior of a group of chemicals. Remember that groups going down the periodic table have similar characteristics. We can look at the behavior of a group and say, aha, I predict that because these chemicals behave in this way, something else in that group will behave similarly. And actually, the periodic table is a fantastic, we'll do that. The periodic table is a fantastic practice in predictability because there have been chemicals, and there still are, elements predicted long before they were discovered by the structure of the periodic table. So we've been able to say, oh, there should be an element that looks like this that fits in here. And we knew that long before we had them all worked out. We're still working on that. And tentative. Science changes. So everything that you're learning in science today is the best we know. When we talk about the development of the model of the atom and what we know about the atom and its structure, that has changed radically in the last 100 years. It's gone through a remarkable series of makeovers, and we understand more about it now than we did 50 years ago, and in another 50 years we'll understand more. So science is changing all the time. What you learn now is the best current knowledge. So that's a little bit about what science is and isn't. Okay, so in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, hopefully not, you've been told in science we do this step, then we do this step, then we do this step, yes? First you do this, then you do, which is a sort of a cookbook, cookie-cutter approach, and science is way more complicated than that. So you'll notice that that is plural. scientific methods. It's not a single method. It's not do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. It's a way of thinking about the world. There are a standard series of steps that we typically go through, but you may go from forming a hypothesis and experimenting right back to changing your hypothesis. So you don't necessarily go through that in order. You observe, you make observations about stuff, you ask questions. The questions you ask may lead you to other observations. So you kind of circle through a lot of this. You don't go in a linear fashion. In chemistry, we do controlled experiments like we do in biology, where we look at how things behave with different treatment. And drawing conclusions is very important in the scientific method. Our data doesn't mean anything until we determine what it means. When we get into the atomic theory stuff, you're going to find the tragic story of the Curies, cheated out of a Nobel Prize, not once but twice, because they got fantastic results. They had made observations, they had asked questions, they had collected data, they had formed a model, a hypothesis, based on their data. They had tested that hypothesis, and when they looked at their results, they thought one thing. Unfortunately, they were completely wrong. They got a result and they didn't know what it meant. Somebody else comes along, looks at their results and goes, I know what that means, and he won a Nobel Prize for it. So that's, you have to know what it means. You have to be able to draw the correct conclusion. Okay. How many of you are familiar with scientific notation? How many of you are so comfortable doing scientific notation that you can do it in your sleep? Okay. On a scale of 0 to 5. 4s, 3s, okay. Let's do some practice. So all this is, you know this, it's a method to make writing really outrageous numbers easy. Let's go to the board.